Welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast with your hosts, Joshua Poniatowski and Alex Taylor. Let's talk football.
Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast. My name is Joshua Poniatowski, and my partner in crime is here with me, Alex Taylor.
What up?
I just want to give a shout out to Alex. Thank you, sir, for holding the fort down last week. Being out sick was no fun, and he still came through in the clutch and did this solo. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, the solo episode was interesting. A little bit of, some learning processes. Not having anyone ping pong back and forth is a little tough, but we survived. I'm glad you survived. I'm glad you're on the upswing and excited for your redemption game,
For sure. Yeah, this is a comeback game, right? Absolutely. Talking about a comeback game, for the first time ever, Florida teams are 0-11 right now in the state. So we're talking about Gators, Miami, FSU, USF, UCF, the Bucs, FAMU, BCU, Stetson, and I put the Jags last intentionally on that list. So every single Florida football team has lost up until this point. I'm rocking the Flamingo shirt because we need the Dolphins to win. This would be the first time in history that has happened. So hopefully the Dolphins can pull it out tonight.
It's a pretty crazy stat. I think I'm leaning towards the Rams winning tonight, but that is pretty nuts that Florida could go 0-12.
Insane, especially in all levels. Different D1, D3,
what would the action
D2.
on that parlay be? The anti-Florida parlay.
Yeah, it would be so much money.
Not that a lot of those teams were ever favored.
Yeah, you'd have to dig to get some BCU and Stetson lines for sure, but that parlay would be massive.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this week, one of the things we're going to do a little bit differently is we have some listener questions that we're going to talk about, whether these trade talks, start sit assistance, that kind of stuff. So if you all have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll talk about them next week. Hit us up on Twitter, those types of things. We'd love to hear from you. But starting off strong from I Heart Tacos on Twitter. I also like tacos.
Great name.
Yep. He's in a Superflex league. He is considering trading James Conner and Caleb Williams for Alvin Kamara and Ladd McConkey. His other QBs are Justin Fields and Joe Flacco currently. He also has a starting QB. I forget who his starter is, but he has one starting QB in that slot, and then the other two are kind of his other options outside of Caleb. So what do you think, Alex?
First off, we love the questions, so we love the engagement. Always let us know whatever you got. This one is a bit tough. Because, we don't know. Flacco's been looking rough. We don't know if we can trust Flacco. Fields is literally a backup. There's got to be someone better out there on the waiver wire than Fields. It's rough. So there's a chance here that you're just abandoning a quarterback in the Superflex spot, and you're basically just doing another normal flex. And, first off, I just want to say it does feel good that I called Caleb as my Smash Player of the Week in the best game of his season. But other than that, he has been straight cheeks. We're talking 6 of his 9 games. He's scored below 11.5 points. That said, I don't know if I like the value enough to just completely abandon the QB position at the Superflex spot. It's a little tough. I like Alvin Kamara down the stretch, but Connor also has a juicy schedule. So those are a bit closer than I think people might think. And then I like Ladd's game. But the Chargers are just a very run-heavy offense. This week he literally had 2 targets. So it's like, I like him sometimes. I don't know if I like him enough to rely on him. So I think not that Caleb has been great, but I just think a quarterback in the Superflex spot has a higher ceiling or maybe floor. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Yeah, has way more upside. Absolutely. Caleb has looked terrible, which is shocking because of the teams that he's been playing have just been so pitiful. Shane Waldron, I think, is the reason why a lot of that has been happening. If he gets let go and they get a new offensive coordinator, I really think we'll see hopefully a turnaround. DJ Moore has been impacted by it, which has been pissing me off because I got some DJ Moore stock. But yes, I agree that I don't think you make this deal. Connor is not that far off from Kamara and strength of schedule. I mean, through the past 4 weeks, Kamara and James Conner are on par with each other for average points. Literally the only thing that Kamara has is that 144-point game earlier in the year. But outside that one huge performance, they're pretty consistent with each other from that production. Moving on to the next question from Bullshark3771 on YouTube. So he's in a PPR league. He traded DeAndre Swift for Devontae Adams. Logic there was to get some value for Swift because he's going to be facing Minnesota and Detroit twice in the coming weeks, who we know have elite run-stopping ability. So what do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, Swift is one of those guys where it's like every time you start to think maybe you have faith in him, he then just goes on the skid. You know, he had that stretch of like 4 weeks where it was like 18
weeks
plus from 5 to week 8. But then the last 2 have just been stinkers. You know, and especially in a full PPR league, I think I do like Adams here. I know the Jets have been rough to watch, but Rodgers is never going to just abandon Devontae. Like, that's his man. They had history. He's going to keep feeding him the ball. He's been averaging about 10 targets a game since he's been in New York. So I just think he's got a really decent floor. And, you know, when a full PPR, Swift is only averaging about 3 targets a game. Like, he's really not a big pass catching back. So with the full PPR premium, I think I'd take Devontae there.
Yeah, I mean, recently Swift hasn't been averaging many targets, but he is a pass catching back. How dare you say that? I would say from what they have,
1 target this week against New England, 0 targets week 8 against Washington. I mean,
career-wise, he's a pass-catching back. This is a crazy stat, not exact, but of the guys who entered the league, it was Austin Eckler, CMC, and DeAndre Swift for the most like receptions and targets as a running back since entering the league. So he does have the ability, but what I will say is he's just not getting opportunities or targets. So that's the only thing.
So we circle back to the Chicago Bears coaching issue. So
yes, for sure. But yeah, Devontae is definitely the way to go here. I agree. I think he upgraded his team. He got, juice out of Swift's value and those pop-off games 4 weeks in a row. So I think it's a great trade. All right, moving into week 10 observations. So I want you to guess what running back room this is, okay? So they signed a running back in 2023 to a 4-year, $24 million contract. They drafted the first running back off the board in 2024. This might give you the hint there with their second-round pick. They re-signed their current running back to a 4-year, $33 million contract, which means they've committed $65 million to their running back room. So which team is this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the draft pick, gives it away. But yeah, it's the Carolina Panthers.
Carolina Panthers. Do you think they're being mismanaged as an organization? Like, what are your thoughts on the Panthers being the way they are?
Honestly, I mean, and I did Hubbard as a sell high a couple weeks ago, and he's went out and had back-to-back like 20-point games on me.
He's a monster.
I just think in this modern NFL, like it's still like relatively cheap compared to basically any other position, that I think having multiple good running backs isn't really a problem. So I didn't really mind the contract. Obviously, from a Jonathan Brooks fantasy owner standpoint, it was terrible news. You're like,
that's rough.
He is anything, especially any kind of dynasty. You're like, oh god, 4 years, what's going on?
Yeah.
But overall, I didn't mind it for Carolina as a franchise.
Okay, and Chubb is only 25 years old too. So talking about dynasty, like that is rough for Jonathan Brooks. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you saw, because I think everyone saw. But, we all kind of knew it was coming.
Yes.
But the token Jamar Chase going berserk game of the year happened on Thursday night against the Ravens. Chase just exploded, 11 catches, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jamar has been a little hot cold throughout his career, I think it's safe to say. But he gets drafted high because he will single-handedly win you a couple weeks each and every year. He's sitting at currently wide receiver 1 on the year, so great for him.
Number 1.
But Josh,
yeah.
If someone had Jamar on their roster this week and still lost, should they just retire from fantasy football forever?
Yeah. Yes. Period. If you have Jamar and you're putting up 55 to 70 based off your scoring, like with bonuses and stuff, and you lose, that's got to be the most heartbreaking thing. And funny enough, on Twitter, there's like this Jamar Chase, I have him thread of teams having him and losing at this point. And they're just like heartbroken. So it's funny to see, but yeah, I played against Jamar this week. I played against Lamar this week. Same league. Going into Thursday, after Thursday night being down almost 100 points.
Done.
I was like, God,
Done.
What a terrible way to now have to watch Sunday football knowing that like this team is pretty much cooked. So, but yeah, that's got to be tough if you lost. Now, if you didn't lose and you're up by like 50, which you should be, you got to be feeling great about Jamar. You got to be feeling solid about that team. Moving into running backs, Christian McCaffrey, the White Wonder, is absolutely back. And the 49ers are the greatest franchise in history. Walk the earth. We are so much better than the Bucs. It's crazy. To be exact, we are exactly 3 points better than the Bucs, than your Bucs. So while CMC didn't do much on the ground, he caught 6 passes, had almost 70 yards through the air. Looks like, honestly, there were some plays where I was like, oh, he would have broke that tackle in the past. I thought, I'm not going to lie, he still looked elite, but he kind of lost a step. Do you think it's possible he lost a step whatsoever? And what are your sentiments about the Bucs being worse than the Niners?
First off, the win aside, can we just put some respect on the play that Baker Mayfield did when he just stiff-armed Nick Bosa for like 20 steps and then threw the 4th down completion to Rachaad White? That was a thing of beauty. But no, I mean,
so amazing.
It was just crazy how much. I mean, they gave McCaffrey 19 touches in his debut, and like Mason just put him on the back burner. Like, just the disrespect for the guy that was just crushing it all season.
He had one opportunity. Yep.
So, I mean, I think from a fantasy standpoint, sure, has he maybe lost a little bit of a step? Sure, but he's just going to get so much opportunity, and he's still so slippery, and his receiving game is just top tier that he's still RB1 probably for the rest of this. Probably more than, I mean, I don't know. Henry and Saquon have both had really good years, but it'd be hard. You can make a case for any of those 3 to finish the year as the RB1 down the stretch. And that following that really unexpected hamstring injury that just popped up out of nowhere and ended Dak's season, Cooper Rush went out and just absolutely sucked. His yards per attempt was under 2. Anything under 5 is considered gross. 2 is just abysmal. CeeDee did get peppered with 10 targets, but the result was 6 catches for only 21 yards. I mean, Josh, do you think CeeDee will have any more productive games the rest of the season? And if you were to trade him away, how low in return value would you consider trading him away for?
Yeah, that's a sticky situation. I honestly think if I had CeeDee, you're not going to get the value that you would want out of him to trade him. And I don't think it would feel good to send him and then him have a couple of boom games and you're kind of left holding the bag for a guy that you're not feeling confident on. At this point, I'd probably hold CeeDee and just kind of bite the bullet and ride it out with him personally. That's what I would do. I know it's probably not great advice, right? You want to try to get value, especially if you're producing, but CeeDee's the type of that player where He's still an elite level talent. Last year we saw it with Justin Jefferson when Kirk went out and he had a bunch of bums throwing him passes. I still think he's going to be able to produce, and he's going to be the main focal point in that offense. So I'm not selling CeeDee. I'm holding, just because you're not going to get the value that you could get from him normally. Rolling into the green machine. Jets, Jets. So Alex, tell me, after another loss this week, moving to 3-7, how cooked are the Jets?
It's tough. Yeah, I mean, from like a morale standpoint, it's definitely tough. I mean, I still like Wilson and Adams from just a consistent amount of targets. But obviously, as you get like late in the season, like I think they're still relevant for the next 4 weeks for sure. But like,
yeah,
who knows if they only win like one or so out of those, and they're just 10 losses already. Season's basically over. Could they shut it down? I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, they have. I mean, think about all their producers. Breece Hall, right, running back. Arguably running back 1, we're running back 5, top running back. Garrett Wilson, Devonta Adams. Like, we're talking about some elite fantasy producers, and you got to be worried if you have them. A little scary just because of that end of the road season, especially if they're just going to pack it in. I'm going to go back to next year and see if I can pull some data on teams' records and some of these elite guys' fantasy points and see if there was a significant drop off, or that like perception that we have of the situation is more of a like cognitive belief and not like a fact. So I'm gonna have to go back and look at that, because I've always been curious about the situation. Like we perceive it that way, but like, does the data support that perception, right?
I mean, and sometimes I think you get those flyer kind of like opposite games where it's like two teams and they're both completely out of it. And it's like there's zero pressure. They're just going out there and just running for the sake of it, just to like get some exercise. And then, the defense isn't playing that hard. They're like carefree, so they're a little bit more nimble. So sometimes you get random pop-off games at the end in that scenario. So, but you never know. Depends on who they're playing against, really.
I'll have to look at that data for sure. All right, jumping over to waiver wire targets. These are players that are typically available in a little bit under, right around the 50% or more in most of your leagues. Who you got for us, Alex? Start us off.
Yeah, Audric Estime, the rookie running back for Denver, only currently 4% rostered. He wasn't exactly exciting this week, rushing for 53 yards on 14 carries, scoreless. But what is exciting is that Sean Payton already came out in his presser today saying Estime will, quote, will continue to get more reps. This week, he also had just played against Kansas City. They got the third best run defense in the league. Upcoming week, he gets to play against Atlanta, who give up almost 50 more yards a game. So the fact that he's got a locked-in opportunity, he's going to get his carries, playing a much easier defense. I think he deserves a pickup for any RB needing team.
Yeah, and I think we're almost seeing somewhat of like a changing of the guards per se from, some of these positions, right? Even wide receiver, like they're trying young guys, running back young guys. So Jaylen McCaffrey, and Javonte Williams, they actually got less rushing yards than who? Do you know who this person is? Sorry, not yards, less rushing opportunities. Not Estime, somebody else. It's a wide receiver. You had
a wide receiver?
It was a wide receiver.
Was it like Debo or something?
No. So Marvin Mims on the Broncos.
Oh, on Denver?
On Denver, yeah. So Marvin Mims had 3 carries.
How many sweeps did they give him? Oh,
yep,
geez.
They gave him 3 carries, and that was more than both of those guys, which I feel like speaks volumes that this guy for sure could be a waiver wire running back sitting out there on free agency if you're in a running back needy situation, right? And the Broncos have been performing fairly well to where they're going to be competing, or at least trying to compete to make a run. So
yeah, they had a great defense. It keeps them in it.
I love that pickup. All right, so sticking with the running back train, Cam Akers resurrected. He's only 20% rostered in leagues. So Aaron Jones left the game with a chest injury, third quarter. From that moment forward, Akers was the lead back. He saw 13 carries to Ty's 4. If Aaron is unable to play and you're desperate at running back, Cam could literally be a pickup and start if, of course, Aaron Jones is out. They face a Titans team who typically has had a solid defense, but past 3 games they've given up about 140 yards on the ground. So it could be a sneaky start if you are in desperation of running back and have some guys on buys.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Ty was kind of like a big pickup there when Aaron Jones was hurt. I mean, we talked about him a couple weeks in a row there, and then all of a sudden Cam Akers just gets all the touches. So kind of surprising. Switching over to like wide receiver. This one is a little bit of a dice roll, but he was my deep sleeper for wide receiver in our pre-draft episodes, and that is Mike Williams, newly traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, currently only rostered 21% of leagues. He was only on the field for 9 snaps, and he only got 1 target, but that target did result in a 32-yard touchdown. So obviously, you're not like super excited about only 9 snaps being played when he was a big letdown with the Jets. But Mike has always been a deep ball receiver. That's his like specialty. And Rodgers just does not have the deep ball this year. Like it's no longer part of his game. And now he goes over to Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson's always been a great deep ball thrower. He loves the moon ball. He literally just pops it up and over. It's his game. It's part of his game. So I think as he, I'm not saying pick him up and start him this week by any means, obviously, but I think he could evolve into that offense more and have some juicy scoring opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, they traded for him for a reason. They're probably going to try to slot him in as wide receiver 2. And we saw how much of an increase Pickens had in offensive production simply by Russ becoming QB1. So, yeah, Mike Williams is probably a sleeper sitting out there right now where if you need wide receiver help, maybe not this week based on how involved he is, but moving forward, another guy that could be seeing 6, maybe 8 targets a week with opportunities in the red zone like we just saw. So, yeah, I like Mike Williams, a viable player out there, sitting out there ready to be picked up. Sticking with the Steelers, Jaylen Warren, he's rostered in about 54% of leagues, so it's a little bit over that 50 mark, but Najee's been a machine. But Warren is back. He's healthy. Najee also got a little bit banged up last game. So I'm thinking that Warren's role is going to increase a little bit. He's also a favored pass catching back. So in PPR, that's huge. And outside that 1 fumble that he had that almost cost him the game, he looked fantastic. When he saw opportunities against Commanders, he picked up yards. He's a great pickup if you have room for him. I don't know if you feel confident starting him unless Najee is out. But he's definitely a running back that, hey, if you're in desperation, maybe you see a split backfield. But I think his opportunity is going to increase as time goes on.
Yeah, it seems like Warren's just been like hanging in like the background of Najee for a while now. I mean, Najee only had he's had a decent year, but only 2.5 yards per carry this last game. Looked pretty rough. Did get a little banged up. So who knows? Maybe it's finally time that Warren can ascend. Another guy who we've talked about a couple times now. It's gonna be Mike Gesicki, the tight end for the Bengals. He's 56% rostered, so kind of a little bit over that threshold we like, but still pretty close. With T. Higgins out, he's been running 60% of his routes out of the slot. And when he does that, he's been targeted at a 30% rate when he runs a route. Jamar had that insane beast game. So obviously that gobbled up all the points. But he was still targeted 9 times, 2 of which came in the red zone. If T. Higgins remains out, they haven't confirmed his status next week. Still to be determined. But if he's out, I would feel confident starting Gesicki in any kind of tight end position, especially with any kind of full PPR action.
Yeah, I mean, with the tight end position, I mean, it's kind of been a switch that flipped. A lot of these tight ends are now popping off, getting more involved in the offenses. But if you're in a tight end needy team and Gesicki's just sitting out there, he's literally a tight end running plays out of the slot 60% of the time. Like, you're not getting that almost out of any other tight end in the game. So he's sitting with a great opportunity if T continues to remain out. All right, our last waiver wire ad is Bo Nix. He's only rostered in 44% of leagues. Bo is QB9 on the season. QB9 on the season. The past 6 weeks, he's been averaging about 20 points a game. He has the Falcons and Raiders coming up on the schedule. So while it's obviously scary and hard to be like, you know what, I'm starting Bo Nix this week. If you need a QB or you're in Superflex, like, he has actually been reliable for weeks. I mean, there was, I think, 1 or 2 games where he had a stinker, but we're going on week 10 now, 80% hit rate. That's pretty good from a late round flyer, maybe waiver wire quarterback if you got some guys on bye.
I mean, yeah, Bo Nix just has like a super reliable floor at the moment. I mean, he's not like a sexy QB who's going to like win you any games, but like if you're pretty solid at your skill positions and you just want steady points, I like Bo Nix right now.
Yeah. Moving over to the buy low, sell high trade targets. We're going to start with buy low, and we're going to start with Alex.
All right, I'm going to let my homer flag fly. I'm going to say Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield, he's been hot all year, so it might be a little hard to buy low, but he is coming off his worst game of the season. His value's down a little bit. We've also, the Bucs have been losing a lot, so I feel like the sentiment has kind of shifted on them. The receivers going down, losing 4 out of the last 5. A lot of people are writing us off. They're like, all right, Atlanta just has the division. But few grasp how insane our schedule has been to this point. Through 10 weeks, New Orleans is the only team we've played with a losing record. 8 of those 10 are solidly in the playoff hunt, but that's all about to change. Next week he does have the bye, which kind of sucks, but maybe you can use that to kind of negotiate his price lower. Maybe the guy is selling away, doesn't have a backup quarterback, and just kind of needs a little desperate, needs that action. Coming out of the bye, fingers crossed that Mike Evans is possibly back from his hamstring injury. Mike is well behind the pace for his 1,000-yard streak, keeping that alive. I know Baker wants that for him and will be chucking it to him whenever he can. I almost thought about doing Mike Evans here because I know he's going to be pushing for that 1,000-yard season.
For sure.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
Just hammies are scary, man. Hammies just always re-aggravate. So it's like, I don't want to tell people to buy low, and then he comes back and tweaks it, and then he's immediately back out. So done. I'm a little bit more confident in Baker's value. But getting back to that cushy schedule I was talking about, we have games against Las Vegas, Dallas, and 2 against Carolina. Those are the 1, 2, and 3 worst defenses in the NFL for points against. We also have games against New Orleans and the Giants, who are middling at best. Unfortunately, the only blemish on the schedule is the Chargers in Week 15. This is possibly the first round of playoffs against the best defense in the league. Yeah. That could be tricky. I'm not going to deny it, but everything else is straight meatballs. So I think overall, he's solid coming off the bye. Low vet value is low. Worst game. Should have a really good rest of the season. Week 15 does suck, but
Yeah, and we talked about Baker being gritty earlier. Like, Baker's just a QB you want to have, so having him on your team also feels good. QB2, I'm honestly a little shocked that the Bucs didn't go out and try to get him some help in the wide receiver market, because they were clicking on all cylinders. Y'all were tearing it up with Godwin and Evans. But yeah, if you can get Baker, I'm starting him every single week, and you got to make it to the playoffs before, I know we like to worry about playoff games. We got to get there too. And he could be a guy that somebody's undervaluing, especially since Mike Evans might not be back until after that bye. So yes, go get Baker. Let him cook. Moving to running back.
Let him bake.
Joe Mixon. I don't think Mixon is going to be like a super buy low target because he's still putting up fantasy points, but he is coming off 2 of his worst performances. He only put up 16 points past 2 weeks, right? So he's still a monster running back. But the reason why I like him so much, because over the past 5 weeks since he's been healthy, he has been number 1 in opportunities with 112 opportunities on the ground. This is outpacing Saquon, who's a second, by 14 carries, which is almost an entire game's worth of opportunities. He's also number 1 in red zone opportunities and top 15 in targets. So when Joe Mixon is healthy and on the field, he is a workhorse running back. Even with Nico coming back, I'm not worried about it. They have a bad playoff schedule. I think they got the Chargers 1 week and the Ravens another from a running back perspective. But if I could get him and he stayed healthy, I would argue that if he did not get injured, he would be in the Saquon, Derrick Henry, Kamara conversation as 1, 2, 3 running back on the year. If he didn't get injured, that's how many opportunities and how massive he has been. So I think you got to try to take your shot now with those 2, decent performances.
I don't know. I think he's still going to be pretty expensive. I mean, 60 points is still above average. I think that was RB
PPR, full PPR.
RB8 this week.
Yeah.
So I don't know if buy low, that's going to be tough. You're going to have to give up a lot. But yeah, I mean,
by lower than his high.
So.
Yeah.
Sure. Any kind of value we can squeeze,
Right. We're going to squeeze all the value out of these guys we can. All right. We're going to move over to the sell high targets. You got Alex.
Yeah. So I'm going to say Chase Brown. And I like Chase Brown's game. He's been coming on really strong as a receiver lately. 9 catches this week. It's mostly just about having a really tough schedule down the stretch. Just, nothing he can control, obviously. But first off, he's still got his bye coming up. That's a week of value missed. I kind of talked about buy alone Baker. He's got his bye. It's like if I'm trading for the guy with the bye, I really ham up. Oh man, I'm losing out on a bye week. Try to drive that value lower. If I'm selling it, I don't mention crap about the buy, and I just hope they don't really don't process it and like, oh, it's apples to apples. We're all even here.
Look in the players.
Still got a buy coming up. Then he only has really 1 juicy matchup, which is against Dallas, but the other 5 games are all against teams on the top 15 of run defense. So for me, I think the return on investment is probably better if you trade him away versus what he's probably going to result for you. I think he just has a lot of decent games. I don't see a lot of boom games for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's at his highest value right now after the past couple weeks, especially with that pass catching performance. The only reason I'm going to disagree with you, I get the strength of schedule, and that definitely plays a factor, and I think you need to be weary of that. But Chase Brown has solidified himself as running back 1, and through the past 2 weeks, he is the only running back to see 100%, not 99, not 98, not 92, 100% of the backfield opportunities. He is literally, it's insane. He is their guy. And that is really the only reason why I would want to hold Chase is because they're not letting anybody else pretty much see anytime. But you could get great value out of him right now if there was another player that you would like. So that fits the mold with our sell high for sure.
And by the way, this next upcoming week, Chargers, number 1 ranked defense, and then the bye. So his value this week versus in 2 weeks,
could be very different. Absolutely. Yeah. If he puts up a stinker against the Chargers and gets 15, 20 carries on maybe 50 yards and no touchdowns, you're looking at 6 to below sub 10 points. Absolutely. You just go buy
maybe I'll make him my buy low after the bye going into week 13,
Right. Bring him back. All right, so I'm gonna go with a wide receiver, a little bit different direction. Josh Downs. He has been powerhouse since returning. He's getting almost 9.5 targets a game, which opportunity production typically follows. But his upside right now is Joe Flacco and volume. And Flacco has honestly not looked great. He has a solid Jets secondary this week coming up. And over the past 2 weeks, he has 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. And they lost both of those games. If they lose against the Jets, I think there's a serious discussion that starts to happening with Anthony Richardson maybe coming back into the fold. And obviously, if Anthony Richardson comes back into the fold, every wide receiver on that team just becomes garbage, and you don't know what's going to happen. So I think it's a good opportunity because the past 3 weeks, one of them was with AR because he had 4 deep receptions and touchdown, which we know AR can drop bombs. He put up 22 points. I think it was like 12 to 15 and another 12 to 15 performance. So people could be looking at the data, looking at the targets. But if that happens to Flacco for whatever reason, I feel like it's going to be tough at that point to feel confident starting him in your lineup, where you could just
I mean, the Colts are sitting at 4-6. I mean, if it gets to a point, I mean, technically they're only 2 back from the Texans for the division lead. But if it gets to a point where the season's pretty much over, as the owner, they might be like, all right, well, just throw Richardson in there just for the sake of it. And obviously, every receiver is not startable at that point, unfortunately. Who knows? Maybe he blossoms sitting on the bench for a little bit,
I mean, look at Bryce. Bryce came back, I feel like, looking better than he did before. That was, it
was against the Giants, but yeah.
It was. And granted, his before was me and you throwing passes as a quarterback. So it's not like it was a very high bar he set.
Bryce has like the weakest arm. Like all of his throws look so like wobbly and they're like barely getting to the receiver. Like what? How? I don't know.
He's a tiny dude, man, and that's what people were worried about. But everything else checked out for them. We go on a whole discussion about this. Let's not go off sidebar tangent. Maybe we'll talk about it next time. But smash start of the week. So these are guys or players or teams that absolute smash, whether that's opponents because they're cornerback matchups or teams that they're facing. But these are the guys that you should feel confident starting. And we do a little prediction. Usually Alex is right. Usually I am also sometimes right. So what you got, Alex?
I had a couple stingers in there. I mean, my call last week hasn't played yet. But I do really need my boy Kyron to pop off tonight. I'm down 27 in a matchup, and he's the only active player. So
that's a lot.
Monster
but I'm
game
down with it
for my smash call would be, that'd be amazing. This week, I'm going to go maybe a little bit bold here, a little bit of a wild card. I'm going to take the crab leg king himself, famous Jameis. He's going back to New Orleans to take on the Saints. I think it could be somewhat of a revenge game. I don't really think there's too much bad blood. But, I mean, Jameis did spend 4 years there until they decided to pursue Carr instead. But it seemed like he really enjoyed the city of New Orleans. So I think he's going to be excited to be back and kind of put on a show for them. Plus, New Orleans has the 4th worst pass defense in the league. So I think bad defense, excited Jameis. I think he starts slinging it early to the tune of 325, 3 touchdowns. But in typical Jameis fashion, he'll also have 2 picks.
2 interceptions. Got to mix it in there. I have a fun Jameis tweet. After these games tonight, starting off next week. The Saints are currently paying him $3.3 million to play them next week. So I just thought that was a funny fact that they're giving him a couple mil to come back. And if they beat him, they just paid him a couple mil to beat him. So right, I just think that's funny data point. The game I'm going to go with is Washington versus Eagles. Maybe this seems like a cop-out, but this is a Thursday night game. I expect A.J. Brown to have a bounce back in the touchdown department. He has been scoreless through 3 straight weeks, even though he's been getting targets, getting receptions. But this week, these touchdowns are going to come to fruition. So I'm going with 5 receptions, over 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns, not 5. Two touchdowns, not 5. So I'm going to be somewhat reasonable there. But he's going to get a multi-touchdown performance. Multi-touchdown.
Hey, I love it. He's
Yeah.
due.
He's absolutely due. All right, well, that's all we got for tonight, y'all. So if you like what you heard, give us a like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. If not, appreciate y'all hanging out, listening to us. As always, go steal a championship, and we'll see y'all later.
Peace.